promised you we'd bring her back. Professor Hill, thank you. Just thank you. But particularly thank you for being here today. There's so much happening in the world that we want to talk about, and Me Too is absolutely, and your work is top of mind. But we wanted to start today with something that was also top of mind. Family separation, very much in the news today, is actually a tactic with long roots, long ugly roots in our history. I know that you wanted to speak a little bit about that today.
Yeah, I think we hear the term family separation, and we don't necessarily have the kind of context that we need to put it in. And maybe it's the teacher in me, and if you'll excuse me for that. But I think it needs to be put in historical context for its real meaning in this country. So family separation was a mainstay of slavery. As we know, it allowed slavery to continue. It wasn't imposed by the government, but the government enforced it by enforcing slavery, and also by in the North by enforcing the Fugitive Slave Act. So people couldn't escape it. Families couldn't escape it. And it has an ongoing impact, I believe, on the descendants of the slaves whose families were separated. Secondly, it has been used since then in the 19th and the 20th century against Native American populations through what have been called Indian schools in attempts to deculturalize them, take them away from their tribal identities, and to strip them of that. So we have two different uses for family separation. One was to dehumanize people so that they could be treated like chattel during slavery. And secondly, to take people away from their cultural roots and then train them to be in service of wealthier and typically white individuals. And then finally, we have its use today in policy against immigrants, against asylum seekers, to, I believe, shape the political identity of this country, to decide or help imprint in the minds of people who belongs and who doesn't. It's not only, I believe, a human rights violation, but I think it's just bad policy because we don't know the long-term impact. We never learned the lessons from slavery and from the treatment of Native populations. And of course, it has a racial element that cannot be denied. And here we are at a moment in time when white nationalism is rising, which makes it even more pernicious and more troublesome. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there as something for us all to think about when we hear the term, and not just sort of think of it as something that is of this moment, but something that we have long needed to deal with as a country. And we will eventually have to deal with it, whether it's this policy or one that comes in the future. But the other thing I would say is, earlier today, you were asked how many of you are mothers. So I think one of the good ways to help us really think about it is think about what family separation would mean to you as a mother.
So before we move into your work with the Hollywood Commission, I was wondering if we could get you to talk a little bit to us about what you think family separation should mean to us as leaders and as citizens.
Well, I think as citizens, we have to be informed. And we can't really fall for this idea that this is an of-the-moment tactic. It has been an ongoing tactic, and that's why I talked about the history. I just think we need to sit back and listen, and as I'm going to discuss when we talk about gender violence, we need to vote our values. We need to vote our values and to figure out where those values are and which candidate is going to be best representative of those real core values that we have. whether it's a value around gender violence and anti-gender violence, or gender equity and gender justice in a larger sense, whether it is around the environment, or whether it's around racial justice. And this is the family separation policy is part of the racial justice issue. But as citizens, I think we have the obligation to be informed and the obligation to speak out, even when we're not voting, but certainly to take that into account when we decide who's going to be best suited to lead our local organizations or our local institutions, and certainly on the national level, since we're in the middle of a presidential election.
Yes, we are. Let's talk about the Hollywood Commission. Can you bring us up to date on your work there?
Well, I think it's important for us, if we talk about the commission, to think about 2 years ago, the Hollywood Commission was formed. And the Hollywood Commission was really a result of an awareness of the Me Too movement and the fact that so many of the stories that led to the Me Too movement were coming out of the entertainment industry. Right. The stories of individuals who behaved egregiously were in the news, and they continue to be in the news. The commission was formed. It includes about 26 member organizations throughout the entertainment industry, including music, motion pictures, and television. But it also does something that I believe is unique and important, which is to bring together corporations, like the studios and agencies, together with unions and guilds and different organizations that make up the entertainment industry at large, to come together to put into place best practices and policies. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of what we've done, but we are starting to build a structure around freelance workers and contract workers, which so many of our entertainment people are, to give them a place to go when they are discriminated against on the basis of any of the identity factors that we recognize. The other thing that we have done, and I'm really proud of this, is that we are just about to launch a survey. It's going to be, I believe, the first ever Hollywood survey that really will test what the culture and climate is in the entertainment industry. What is actually happening? Now, I think that is important, and I honestly hope that just about every industry will follow suit. Yeah. Because it is important for us as individuals to know what we are doing and what needs to be done in the future. And we can't know that until we know where we are right now. And so the survey is going to be launched in a couple of weeks, and I'm excited about that. And frankly, I'm hoping that much of what we do can become a model for other either industries or individual institutions. But just keep in mind that what we have learned now from all the books and the articles is that we're not just talking about individual behavior.
Right.
We are talking about systemic problems that have become embedded in our practices, our policies, our contracts, every aspect of our work lives. Right. And they're cultural too. Right. So even if they're not written down, they are understood as the rules of operations in certain cultures. So we are taking all of that on. We had estimated that we'd be done with it in about 5 years. That's a joke. It's not going to happen when you're dealing with that deep a problem. It doesn't happen in 5 years. But we are putting together the building blocks to do so. And we ultimately hope that there will be legislative reform as well. And that brings me to one point. We have been listening to the presidential debates, and I've been trying to keep track, but I haven't heard one question about gender violence posed to the candidates.
That's interesting.
that, that needs to be addressed. I mean, 2 years ago, or right before the inaugural, women took to the streets. And one of the reasons that they did was because of the issues that were raised by the Me Too movement. And so we are a powerful force. There is a hashtag out now called Me Too Voters. And it's really, I think it's about gender justice. And what happens around gender violence will have an impact, a ripple effect, I believe, throughout. Whether it's about equal pay or maternity and parental leave, whether about it's just recognizing the differences in the culture and climates in our various workplaces that have a disparate impact on women. So I'm hoping that you will pay attention, press for questions, talk to me, people in the media. You're the media.
I am.
I'm talking to you, but I'm really talking.
Openly the media, yeah.
But I think this is something that we need to be raising awareness about. And if you go to a town hall and you're in a primary state, I hope you'll raise your hand and ask the candidates what they're going to do about gender violence.
And that's a wonderful segue. I will now hope that you will raise your hand and ask a question of Professor Hill.
No questions.
Oh. Thank you.
Hi, Amy Capolanti, Wolf of Symantec. I came in like bowed at your feet last night after dinner because you're such an icon for so many of us in the room. So I'm going to ask the question, and if it's inappropriate, say so. But the most recent justice hearings for the justice to the Supreme Court, what did that bring for you? What emotions did it elicit, and how did you walk away from those results?
Well, it was profound disappointment and sadness because the perception that so many people had from that was that we haven't made any advances in 28 years. And I know that that is not the case. And I think we all know that, but then when we had the opportunity to display it, it didn't happen. And so, but it just means that we'll have to work harder, that we have more work to do, and that we have to use our voices and speak up. There's an incredible amount of power, as she says, in using one's voice, whatever your platform is. And really whatever your position is, your policies are, use your voice. And the other thing that we have to do is to engage with each other. Because I honestly believe that women know how to talk to each other. More so, and you hear this in Congress all the time, more so than men. And to really come together around these issues and understand and see the humanity in all of us. So I'm hoping that that's what will happen from Kavanaugh hearings.
That is unfortunately the perfect place to start. We are just about out of time. I'm sorry, Professor Hill, 15 minutes just isn't enough, but thank you so very much, and thank you for the context setting.
Thank you.